Good evening. Tonight is a public meeting of the Lowell Zoning Board of Appeals for January 23rd, 2012. Tonight we have two matters before us, one under new business, the other under other business for administrative review. We'll take up the new business first. That's ZB 2011-62. And the petition is a special permit and variance. The applicant is Stephen Geary. The property is located at 30 Howard Street, and the petition is to convert a single to a two-family without meeting parking requirements pursuant to section 6.1.4 and 12.2A of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Geary.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, happy New Year.
Yep, good evening.
Folks, I'm here representing Mr. and Mrs. Einstein Dow relative to the property at 30 Howard Street. This property is located in a UMU district. If you're familiar with the area, it's just off Westford Street behind, I believe, Culligan Waterworks, just beyond the Gallagher Terminal. It's that right just after you take a right onto Westford Street, just past Oak Ave. It's a street that goes downward from Westford Street as it approaches the bottom of the hill, and there are probably 4 houses on the right side and maybe 5 or 6 on the left side, somewhere around there. But before you tonight is a request in the first instance for a special permit to use this property as a two-family. It's a very large structure, and historically it has been used as a three-family, I believe, or at least a multifamily, which is very consistent with the area and certainly meets all the criteria for a special permit. What's interesting about this property is it already has all the utilities already set up, actually for 3 units, but they're going to eliminate 1 and just use it as a two-family if this board allows this request for special permit. So it's an allowed use in that area. It meets all the criteria for special permit. It's in line with the master plan with the city of Lowell, and basically it would just be an ongoing use as to what it has historically been used for. I handed in some plans that show the interior of the units, how they're set up. It's an unusually large structure for a two-family. Both units are very large. It's a very well-kept piece of property, and there's not going to be any structural changes at all to the outside nor to the inside. Nothing more than a little electrical work, some touch-up, and some paint is all that's needed. We also have a request before you for a special permit that exactly meets the criteria for the hardship owing to the soil conditions and circumstances related to the topography of that property. And relief for this variance can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent of the zoning. And pretty much in a nutshell, there's no other way for these folks to be able to utilize this property aside from obtaining a variance from this board. Their house, if you're from the front side of Howard Street, is on a hill in the front. So in order to create any parking there, they would be required to carve in to going towards their house, and it would aesthetically look terrible, and it would require them putting up, I think at one point, a 20-foot retaining wall, which could impose another danger to children or to the neighborhood. But it makes no sense to do that for construction reasons. And on top of that, folks, most importantly, it makes no sense to do it because there's ample on-street parking in that whole area. Hopefully, everybody's had an opportunity to go by there, but I went by many times over the last couple of months, and as we grew closer to this meeting, I went by at 7 o'clock this morning, and there were 7 spots available right within 20 yards of the house, one right in front of 30 Howard Street. At 6 o'clock on my way here, there were 9 spots available. And pretty much that's attributed to Westford Street has a big corridor where no cars are hardly ever parked there. On Howard Street, there's both sides of the street. There's one side where I think one gentleman owns most of those homes, and there's some parking for those units within. On Howard Street, on my client's side of the street, there's another unit that has a carved-in area that creates 5 spots, so there's not a lot of pressure on Howard Street itself. But aside from that, there's so many smaller side streets where there's ample parking that there's not an issue with parking at all. On top of that, this area is located in a very close to 2 bus routes that are right there, close to public transportation, the commuter rail, the Gallagher terminal, which has the Gallagher public parking, which is within the 1,500 feet as a fallback, but for all intents and purposes and for practical reasons, that will never be utilized for anybody at this house or this area because they simply don't need it. There is plenty of parking there. If you see the plan that I've submitted through the engineer Damaris and Associates, because my clients would like to enhance the viability of renting it and to probably get, for economic reasons, get higher rents, they would like to use the two spots where the garage formerly was in the back of the property. And if you've gone down there, or if you can see from the plan, the topography goes down gradient. It starts at, say, where their property is at 83, and it will go all the way down for the purposes of this discussion to, say, 75. It's a significant drop. What my clients propose to do, and after feedback from the Department of Planning and Development in the engineer's office, and my discussions with Aaron as to possibly ways to handle that in a specific way. They would put a concrete wall from the north side of their home all the way across to the center line, which is where they own, and they would bring in fill, and they would fill that, shore up and stabilize that area, and then pave it. So the vehicles would have, the two vehicles that would park there would have a safe way to get in and out of those parking spots. In other words, they could, enough room where they could back up and have the proper turning circumference. And I think that more than does that. I think it's an area of, maybe 8 feet. On top of that, you can see that the plan has spots number 1 and 2 that are closer to the building. There's a 5 feet difference from the building to the beginning of the parking spot. With further discussions with Aaron, I think that we can move those parking spots up further to create more distance between the house, and it'll be less pavement and easier access to the parking spots and easier chance to back out. It's a it's a plan that they would agree to do as a condition, but what I would suggest, if the board would consider that, I'm sure you can have some questions, but they couldn't do that until May or June, and that's assuming that we can get a paving company to be, and an engineer out there soon enough to do that after the weather clears and it dries out, and sometime in mid-May, which is when we all see the paving trucks really start to go and the paving companies really rev up. So I would suggest or request the board, if they would consider a 6 to 8 month period after the expiration of any appeal period, if this board sees fit to approve this tonight, to do that. In the meantime, they could get their CO, and they could get tenants in there, and they could have that property start producing income, because right now it's just sitting there without anything happening. It's a very well-kept property, and then they would have the financial wherewithal and the time to be able to address those concerns. So I would anticipate by the time the asphalt plants close next year for the season, this would already be done. And what the city would get here is a very good piece of property that's providing 2 large homes for families that need it in this area. And as I said, a lot of people in that area aren't going to need cars. It's so close, it's on the outskirts of downtown, and it's so close to 2 bus routes and the commuter rail that parking really isn't an issue. And as to readdress the special permit issue, this is an allowed use in this UMU area. There's huge multifamily, tenement houses, there's businesses, there's everything around here, and there has never been a parking issue before. I would like to address, a gentleman did send in a letter saying that he can't be here, but he opposes it, and I just want to call to the board's attention. I haven't talked to the gentleman, but I do know, I did look up the deed to that. It turns out that he owns, not only he lists 23 and 33 or something on his letter, but I think it's 23 to 33. I think it's 23, 25, 27, 33, and 35 of the units he owns. Essentially, it's the whole other side of the street. And some of those, I believe, are not just single family. So all those multi-units he's using for parking, and this is a simple request for a 2-family that was being used as a 3-family, albeit not legally. And my clients had purchased this property back last May, and right away, they tried to address these issues to make this property better and a better place for the city of Lowell, and as a result of that, it'd be economically a better investment for them. So I'm here to answer any questions you'd have, but I respectfully ask this board to approve both the variance and the special permit based on the fact that it meets all the criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. First question I'll ask, are they currently living there themselves, or is their plan to live there or to rent out both units?
No, their plan is to rent out both units.
Okay. And as far as...
And there is nobody living there right now.
Right, and that's the way it appeared to me when I drove by.
Right.
In regards to Oak Ave, what's your understanding how what we're calling a passageway, how that's being treated? What's your understanding
Well,
of?
I see a sign saying Oak Ave, and I'm told that it's a private way. I do know that, from my own eyes and from what I'm told by my clients and a neighbor that's here today, is the city has paved that, has plowed that in the past. There's a fence there, so it's essentially, an alleyway that's been used. It's one of these things in the city of Lowell that it's just one of these streets that exists that never, I'm not aware that it's ever been accepted as a public street. I think it's a private passageway. So my clients can only do so much to the area they own. They can't touch anybody else's property, but they can definitely enhance it. Is it passable? It's been passable for them the whole time. There's another neighbor here that's always used it. I think he said since 1997.
Yep.
So, is there storage or anything underneath it? Absolutely not. There's no water. But it appears to be passable. I did see a note from Lisa DeMeo when I spoke to her, and her understanding is that the whole street needs to be improved, but I didn't think I think that's an unfair burden to put on my clients just to create 2 parking spots that really they don't even need because there's plenty of parking, but it will enhance their rentability, if you will, for the units. So.
And the two spots in back that you mentioned, are they going to be, both spots going to be used for one of the units, or will it be like one car each for each of the units?
My understanding is they would allocate 1 spot for each unit, and then the other spot would be outside. And I think that makes sense as well. There could be a situation where one tenant doesn't have any vehicles because a lot of folks in that area don't, and that's why they rent in that area. It's accessible to downtown, the bus routes, and so forth. But my guess is these units are so large that there will be families there, so there'll at least be 1 car per unit. So I think it would be, it might not make sense to think that there wouldn't be a car, but it's a possibility.
So the plan would be for the off-street parking, Howard Street would be used for those purposes.
Yeah, the on-street parking.
On-street,
Yeah, on-street.
yep.
Howard Street, Westford Street, the whole corridor, which is literally within, from the distance of 50 yards, which, in that area is nothing unusual for people who can't park exactly in front of their house. I did notice a few barrels in front of houses there tonight, so, where I thought before it wasn't the South Boston situation where there's chairs and there's desks and fistfights. I don't think there's been anything like that. I think there was a dispute, from what I was told tonight by a gentleman that's here, within the gentleman that opposed it. He has a lot of units, and there was a guy at the end of the street that owns a car repair place, and he was concerned that some of his cars were parking there. But every time I've gone by in the last couple of months, and I've tried to go by at all different times, and I don't know if you folks had a chance to go by, but there's always been 7, 9 spots. I can't think of when there's been less than that. And when I say that's I'm not referring to only on Howard Street. I'm referring to that long stretch on Westford Street that's right near it, the street at the bottom of Howard Street, both to the right and to the left. And a lot of those houses around, they have these little inlets, little cut-ins, where they have 4 and 5 parking spots. And I think that takes a lot of the relief off. And my clients, that would be ideal if the topography of their house wasn't such that it makes it impossible. You might have a retaining wall that's as high as right there, and it doesn't make economic sense. It's not practical. And again, there's so much on-street parking that there's no need for that in that area.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do, do you have anything else you want to add at this point?
I don't, but I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions anybody may
I
have.
think what I'll do first is open it up to the public.
Sure.
And I didn't announce at the beginning of my opening, but If anyone wishes to speak either in support or opposition, if you please sign in at the podium before addressing the board. Is anyone here that'd like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? Yes, sir. You come to the podium.
You want me to write my name here?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Name and address.
Okay. Anyway, my name is John McGuire. I live next door to this house. That's at 36 Howard Street. I've been there since 1997. The Gals are the fourth owner of this house since I've been there. It's been a house that's not been a severe problem, but it's been a problem off and on over the years. It's been sort of a rabbit warren of rooms inside this huge house. And sometimes it's had 3 or 4 tenants. Sometimes you can't even, in the past, can't even tell how many tenants were in there. And many of them had cars and they parked out in front on Howard Street anyway. So I, as a property owner there, am very glad to see this property becoming stable. I think if they make it into a stable 2-family where people can pay a decent rent instead of a chopped up borderline legal place where people are paying $350 a month, it's just going to improve the street. The house went into foreclosure about 1.5 years ago. The Gals bought it in May, and I've gotten to know them, and I think they're stable, hardworking people. And I have every, desire to have my neighborhood. It's not that pretty a neighborhood anyway, but I have every desire to have it get better. So I'm all in favor of this.
Okay, sir.
Any
Thank you.
questions?
No?
Okay.
Anyone else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. That portion of the public meeting is closed. Anyone here would like to speak in opposition? 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 Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'll open it up to the board. Dennis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a great case of inner city kind of living where you have the cars parked behind the house and you have a nice green lawn in the front of the house. So I think that it makes a lot of sense to try to preserve that if we can and not park into that hill and create a huge wall that would not be the prettiest sight. And like I say, I think that there is a lot of parking on the street. I'm a little surprised at this 8-foot wide passageway that you're making into a backing out space. And I'd like you to just talk to me a little bit more about 8 feet. Is that all you're going to be able to stabilize with that hill? Because it seems like it's a little tight for a backing in spot in the back of the house.
I think the 8 feet, well, part of the 8 feet I was referring to, Mr. McCarthy, was the difference between the higher grade to the low grade for the fill. I'm not sure if it's exactly 8 feet as to what the pavement is. I think it's 8 feet from their property to the center line. And when I had discussed that with Aaron, we talked about, making it specific so they know what their marching orders are and there's no ambiguity as to what they're supposed to do. They'd be more than willing to do whatever they can beyond that line if they have a legal right to do it, but they only own to the center of that line. Is that something, Aaron, that if I could jump over to Aaron, is that something that they could do? Do you think the 8 feet is something that is enough circumference, or?
Yeah, I can answer that question. When we, Mr. Gary and myself, talked about this project a little bit, I was trying to, for the board's background and information, and trying to give them a little bit more detail into our comments, specifically related to the private way and it being or providing adequate access for cars to those parking spaces. And one of our primary concerns was the fact that you get farther down Oak Ave, particularly behind the subject building, the grade starts to go downhill at quite a rate, and then it also is kind of concave, and it looks like there's a fair amount, or at least some erosion that happens there. And so what we were looking to see, if the board felt that the application was entitled to a variance, was that at the very least that Oak Ave was improved along that portion, the back area portion of the property, so that cars could pull in. And then, I think more importantly, the bigger challenge is actually exiting the spaces, because they're gonna have to exit, pull out, pull into that area that starts to grade downhill, and then exit down Oak Ave. So what we were recommending is that that area be graded more flat, paved, so that it has a, has more permanent surface to it, and then, whether it needs a retaining wall or whatever it needs to make sure that the regrading and then the downhill slope don't erode over time. The 8 feet that we had discussed was just a matter of kind of looking at the plans and going from the I guess, southeast corner of the property where there's the porch roof. Going from that point north, 8 feet should give enough space for a car to pull out and then forward. I wasn't referring to in that discussion the 8 feet, which is the distance between the property boundary and the center, or what appears to be the center line of the passageway. As Attorney Gary noted, the property owner owns in a private way the fee ownership to the center line of a private way. And in fact, in this deed, it actually states, when the description of the property line describes it to the center line, but has passage rights for the entire length of Oak Ave, which again is a private way. That's how all private ways work. So they automatically have the ability to pave that 8-foot dimension. They could get permission from the property that's abutting to them to make necessary improvements for that to be an accessible way. So the 8 feet that I was referring to wasn't necessarily the distance between the property line and the center line of the private way. It was a distance between the corner of the building going north on Oak Ave for the adequate turning radius for a car to pull out and then exit.
Right. And it just so happens it's 8 feet from the corner of the building to the center line. So I think we were both talking about a couple of different things. But again, they would be happy to go further, if they could. It's just a matter of what that entails to do. And if you look at it, if you went out there and you saw where the parking spot is proposed, and you go to what I thought was the center line, there's enough room to do it. Would it be better if it was 16? Definitely, definitely. It can be done at 8, but at 16, it's definitely better for everybody. It just gives them more of a circumference to turn. But, I don't know that they have the authority to do that, or that they will ever be able to obtain that authority. They'd be happy to do all this as a fallback. In other words, if the variance is granted, because there's plenty of on-street parking, and that they pursue this 2 spots in the back with the pavement, and to go even further, they'd be happy to do that. They want to do that because it enhances the value of their property, enhances the rentability of their property, which is why we propose that in the first instance, rather than just a straight variance for the 4 parking spots, because there's plenty of on-street parking. And I agree with you, it makes sense. It's to tear out the front of the house to create parking, just meets, all that does is meet the code. I mean, that just meets the code and destroys a neighborhood. So it doesn't, we wouldn't need a variance for that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to do it that way. I do like the idea, as you do, of parking in the back, because it gives it that look where we can keep the cars away from the street. And that area, in back there, if anybody's gone back there, it's not very pleasant to look at right now. Obviously, that's all going to be cleaned up as part of this once they can get going. They're really not allowed to do much with it now because they don't have any permits.
I just have one more question. Thank you very much. And I do think that you have roughly 35 feet or so, 16-foot parking space, and you have room to back in. So the 8 feet works even just to the center line of the passageway. But snow storage, how is the passageway dealt with? It has a street sign, so it looks like a real street, but maybe it isn't. And how is snow dealt with there?
It's funny. I mean, I think that. Sure. You certainly do.
Yes, sir.
Basically, what has happened is that until very recently, in the winter, that place just gets blocked in from about my house down. It has not been plowed until the last couple of years when the sign came up.
Okay.
So what we did is we parked back there during good weather, and then when the weather got bad, those few people who were parked back there would go out on the street. So that sort of an issue. But if the city plows it, I guess they'll have to find a place to put the snow.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Kevin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think I love the idea of parking the cars behind the house, just to get them off the street. I think it's good use of that back area and cleans it up. It seems like there's some doubt of whether it's a city street or is it privately owned? Is this a deeded street?
There's no doubt, it's a private, according to the deed, it's a privately owned street. There's an easement, a passageway that they have a right to use.
Okay, that's they have an absolute right to use. It's not gonna be, blocked in at some point. From
Can't
somebody
be.
that owns- Okay, all right, that was my clarification. Another one was the third floor property. Is the intent to use that as the third floor of the structure, I mean? Is
Yes,
that
the
part of
third floor
second
would be the other bedrooms in one of the units. It wouldn't be used as a third unit.
Right, so it's second floor. and it's
Second
gonna
floor,
be
yes.
For,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, on both sides.
No, other than that, I think it's a good project. It's good for that area. I agree wholeheartedly with the neighbor that I'd rather see that than transitional people in and out at a weekly rate or whatever they were doing recently. So good luck with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I also agree that it's a great project. Kevin did raise the same concern as mine, that we're going from a 3 to 2, so that third level is just gonna be bedrooms, and I'm clear with that. The only question I do have is, as it relates to the paving, are they just gonna do paving to the gravel line, to the passageway? Or are they just gonna go to the center line in the 2 spots? Are they gonna repave that entire area?
Well, I think what the plan is they're going to work with planning and development. I mean, they would agree as a condition
Right.
to work with planning and development to utilize that area that's necessary to prepare and shore up and stabilize that area and pave it for the 2 cars to be able to get in and out of there, whatever they can do to do that. I mean, I'm sure that if they can work with planning and development to come up with a plan. But what I'd like to do is to specify exactly what my client's obligation is to avoid a situation, 7 months down the road where there's a discussion as to what the condition was and what their requirements are. So, what my clients would agree to do is to prepare the area that they control as much as they can to put they'll even do the retaining wall. It may not be necessary, but I think that's what they were advised by somebody who came up to said, it's gonna look really nice there, but they said it would require a retaining wall to do that. That's a significant expense, but they're willing to do that because that's something that stays there. So they would put the retaining wall there, bring the fill in, level that area off that they're going to use for those 2 spots, stabilize it and pave it for that area that they control. I can't make any representations that they'll be able to do anything beyond the property that they own.
I agree. I just wanted to clarify that for the record, that, the subject property, space 1 and 2, is only gonna be in control of the property owners, and what happened outside of that would be, the responsibility of other parties. I did go by the property, on several occasions, because I happen to use that as a pass-through, but I too saw plenty of places of off-street parking. Even when I look at this overview, I only see 3 or 4 cars on Howard Street. I think the idea of parking out back is great. The only one concern I had, and that obviously would be done through planning and development and special services, would be when you pave would be the grade, and I'm sure that'll be dealt with. So I wish you the best of luck with the project.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Corey, before I turn to you, just one thing I'll bring out, and Mr. Gary mentioned it. I'm just going to read into the record the letter we received from the gentleman in opposition. I should have mentioned that during when I had the public hearing open. This is from Sanyon Yun at 23 and 33 Howard Street, Lowell, Mass. This letter is in regards to the conversion of 30 Howard Street, Lowell, Mass. From a single-family to a single-family housing to a 2-family housing. My tenants and I are concerned about this conversion, primarily due to the lack of street parking on Howard Street. In addition, there is also a car repair shop on our street whose customers take up a lot of the street parking already. Although I cannot be at the meeting, my stance is that I am against the conversion due to the already existing difficulty of street parking availabilities that the Howard Street neighborhood faces on a daily basis. So I just want to read that into the record, and this was dated January 17, 2012, and Mr. Gary had already referenced it, but I wanted to read it into the record anyways. Corey?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I was by there today. I went by there a couple of times to monitor the on-street parking, and it does seem to be some availability there during the day, from what I can see. So, and I must commend the petitioner here. This home is probably in better condition than most of the surrounding homes on the street. So, I can see you put some money and some effort into this home to make it a viable rental property for you. And most certainly, you are willing to create these 2 parking spaces in the rear, which I think are very, very important, because, there's that on-street, I'm sure, in the winter with snow on the ground, could get very, very clustered out there. And this will help relieve it, where normally houses on the street don't have any off-street to begin with. So this will help the situation. But I am a little concerned, and Mr. Gary, you also said that the petitioner, your client, would work with planning and development to stabilize that area, to make sure there's just sufficient area to back up and get out of there. And that's basically my only concern in this petition. I think this will definitely work, and without being any kind of detriment to the neighborhood or his abutters. So I do support the petition. Thank you very much.
If I could just ask if that's a suggested condition, that the petitioners be required to work with planning and development to stabilize the area to allow for safe parking, safe turning around for the parking of the 2 proposed spots, and that they be allowed to get a CO prior to fulfilling that condition. In other words, if we could have 8 months to do that, because right now we're in January, and you really can't even determine what fill you're going to need until everything dries out sometime in mid to late May, and then we're at the mercy of the availability of the workers. So I think that's a reasonable request, but what I would like to do is make sure that my clients could get the approvals from this board and have that time before the end of the year to fulfill that requirement, so they can get a CO, they can get tenants in there. In the meantime, they can use the surrounding on-street parking, which I don't think is going to be any issue at all, and that will give them a chance to work with DPD and do the right plan for that. My guess is it's not just going to be go in, this is what we're doing. They may work with them on some shrubbery issues and some things that they might suggest there. My clients are more than willing to be reasonable with anything like that, but I just don't want anything holding up the ability of my clients being able to get some tenants in there to make the place economically feasible, if that's something that the board would consider.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Do you think, Mr. Gary, that 6 months will be suffice from
The time, the expiration of the
if this board
appeal.
does it? Yeah, if granted a CO, do you think 6 months would be suffice?
I think we could do that, and you know what, if they couldn't do it for legitimate reasons, we could come in and ask for an extension. So I think 6 months from the time of the expiration of the appeal, if it's approved. So that would give them till, say that's the end of February, March, April, May, June, July, so to give them to the beginning of August, so 6 months from the time of the expiration of the appeal period. Because they really can't do anything in the interim, so they're kind of at a standstill. But I think that's reasonable, and if for, reasons of working with DPD or something else, they can request an extension. If that's necessary, they'll do it, but hopefully we don't have to do that. So yes, that's acceptable.
Okay, and I believe we'll need 2 separate approvals, Mr. Chairman, on this? And the conditions look like they'll pertain more to the variance than the special permit? Okay.
Just before we go to that, I just want to summarize where we're at. So I guess in looking at this whole project, I mean, obviously, one thing, I'd like to commend you, Mr. Gary, for the package that you put together, because I think DPD even mentioned it in the write-up. I think you hit on all the points that we as a board are always interested in looking at and looking into. So I know I appreciate a package that's fully complete and at least goes through all the details. So
Part of that was arm twisting from Aaron, so
That's okay.
and Joe Janowitz, so
It's okay.
I can't take all the credit for that.
Yes, it's as if he's been here before, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. No, I think, it was enjoyable to go through it, and I think you've hit on all the points. Obviously, to me, the biggest issue is the parking issue, and I think you've made it pretty clear. I almost look at the parking the way it's set up because of that passageway. You have a hardship to begin with. Even though there is a way to get in there, obviously, I think we'd all agree it's kind of a tough way to get in there. I know when I took a ride down there, all I could picture was I was going to get stuck down there and wouldn't be able to get out. So the whole issue around whether it's I guess it's a private way, it's a passageway, I think we all understand how that's going to be treated. We talked about the condition, which I think is fair and reasonable, what we've gone through. I think the petitioner and yourself have at least provided some type of remedy to try to fix up that area back there. I mean, I know we as a board always like to get cars off the street, so whether it's 2 or 22, 2 is better than 0. And I would agree with you that there is parking availability, whether it's on the side streets or even if somebody had to go to the garage, if they had friends, at least it's within distance. I also believe that you've met all the conditions of variance and special permit for the reasons that you're here. And so with that said, I'll entertain whichever one you want to go with first.
Yes, you, Mr. Chairman. Make a motion to approve the special permit for this home to be used as a 2-family dwelling.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a roll call?
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Belanger?
Approve.
Mr. Ahern?
Approve.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved?
Mr. Perrin?
Approved.
Okay, Ms. Geary, you've been approved for the permit. Mr. Clerk?
Make a move to approve the variance for requested 2 parking spaces based on a hardship with the topography of the land.
Second.
The condition for the...
With the following condition, that the petitioner will work with planning and development to prepare and stabilize an area behind the 2 proposed parking spaces so there may be sufficient space for a vehicle to back out of driveway. This work is to be completed 6 months within expiration of appeal period.
Can we specify that that's the land that my clients control and own? The land behind it that they control and own, they don't have,
Right.
they may not have any
So you mentioned about stabilizing the area around the 2 parking spots is what we're talking about.
Right, right.
Up to the point of the passageway.
Right.
Okay, up to the point, we can add that in, Aaron.
If I could jump in there, though, I'm not sure that 8 feet is gonna be enough. I understand that legally, that there's a challenge with paving the area beyond the 8 feet to the center line. But if that's the only area to be paved, it's unclear that there's gonna be enough room for the cars to pull out. That the applicant does have the ability to, seek, at a minimum, seek permission from their abutters to pave and improve a portion of the other side of Oak Ave. But it's, I haven't put any turning templates on or consulted with the transportation engineer to exactly what that turning area would need to be. But it may be and is likely to be beyond that 8-foot dimension to the center line. I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention before we move too much farther.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is we shouldn't be mentioning anything about the footage, anything around the 8 feet, because I think we also talked about working with DPD
Well,
with the
right.
stabilization of the area, with the fill, with the paving, correct?
Well, the only thing, my point is that I wouldn't restrict required improvements to the area that only the property owner has ownership rights to, because it's unclear, looking at the plan, whether or not paving only that area would be or provide adequate access for the cars to make it in or out. And I think this may have been what Dennis was pointing out earlier, that if it was just paving to that center line, the car is probably not going to be able to make it out of that parking space anyway. So all I'm saying is that I would, if it's okay, just for the board's consideration, I wouldn't place a restriction on the paving and improvements being only to the center line. That's,
And through you, Mr. Chairman, that's acceptable. If they, whatever it takes to,
Sure.
to meet that safe turn circumference in that area, again, they're gonna do the retaining wall. I can't imagine that the paving company would say, we're gonna stop in the middle of the street, because how do you stabilize with fill? Fill doesn't just end, then it would create more erosion. So, I mean, I probably shouldn't have asked that. I can't, my clients can only commit to what they can do as far as what they own, but I don't know, I can't imagine anybody's gonna have any problem with it. Any of the other abutters from the other side of the street would have any problem with them improving that area, because it's not affecting the passageway at all. They can still use it. In fact, it would be more passable. So that's acceptable. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's,
No, that's fine. That's why I don't think we, and Aaron, you correct me if I'm wrong, I said it for the third time now, but I don't think we need to start mentioning about footage. In other words, I understand what you're saying, I understand what Mr. Geary's saying, I believe everybody else understands. I just don't think we need to get hung up on that 8-foot
exactly,
measurement, and then that's, that's the end of the road. So
exactly.
it's just working with DPD to create a stabilization plan which provides paving for the area, working with DPD. And then also, we wanted a 6-month completion.
from the time of the expiration of the appeal period.
Correct.
6 months within, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, do you,
Start from the top again?
Sure.
Okay. Make a motion to approve the variance with the following conditions: that the petitioner will work with planning and development to prepare and stabilize area behind the 2 proposed parking spaces, so there may be sufficient area for a vehicle to back out of driveway, limited to what the applicant has ownership and rights to, work to be completed within 6 months of end of appeal period.
and just, the only other thing I'd add is working with DPD for the final plan.
And then work with planning and development for the finalized parking plan.
Okay, and have a second.
Second?
Have a roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Belanger?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. Ahern?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved with conditions.
And Mr. Perrin?
Approve with condition.
Okay, so Ms. Gary, you've been approved with conditions. Aaron, do you have a set of plans you want to have Mr. Gary sign off on?
I do.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep. Okay, the next matter before us is under other business. This is ZB 2011-48. The petition is administrative review of previously granted relief. The applicant is the law office of Kevin J. Murphy. Property is located at 81 Bridge Street, and the petition is to convert retrofit commercial condominiums into a day habilitation center pursuant to Article 12, Table of Uses of the zoning code. Mr. Occasion,
Yes.
how are you?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Brian Occasion for the applicant, New England Community Care LLC. And with me tonight is Lynn Brown-Zunes, who is the CEO of said company.
Okay, so last time you were here...
Last time we were here, we had that protracted hearing
Yep.
relative to the napping building. And at that time, New England Community Care was in a purchase and sale agreement to purchase 16 of the 17 units in the napping building. And since that time, we have purchased unit number 17. And tonight, we just wanted to incorporate Unit 17 into our plans that we had submitted previously. The prior plan submitted in October had a detailed plan of what was going to be retrofitted inside the napping building, and we submitted a plan to Mr. Jenowitz and Mr. Clausen that just incorporated Unit 17. And Unit 17 was formerly a law office, and for right now, it's just going to be incorporated as administrative offices in the building. So there's no material change to the plans other than it's a administrative office now. That's the first issue. The second issue is, when we were here previously, we represented to you that this was going to be an other healthcare facility for intellectual and behavioral disabilities individuals, and we said we were going to have 200 clients, and there would be roughly 100 to 120 per day at the facility. And in talking with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it has come to our attention that the real need in the city of Lowell is for elder care, adult day health, basically daycare for elderly individuals who can't prepare their lunches, and it gives them a place to go to do some recreational activities and some training. So it's still going to be another healthcare facility, but the plan now, with your approval, would be to have 100 behavioral disabled individuals and then 100 elderly. So it's still 200 total people. It's still servicing a need within the city. It's just a different clientele for half of the population that we represented earlier. And in speaking with Mr. Clausen, it seemed to fit within the character of our application beforehand, but because we made that representation to you back in October that it was going to be behavioral and intellectual disabilities, we just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Do you have another revised set of plans that you brought tonight? Did you?
That I brought tonight? I believe I do. I did submit them to the board via email. I'm going to see if this is the first floor. I gotta get this thing. If you bear with me for a second, we've had quite a number of plans in this. The outside one.
Aaron, is that the same set of plans that?
Okay, great.
Can you just point out to the board the unit in question that wasn't included the last time?
Sure. The unit in question is unit number 17, and that's on the second floor of the building. And the napping building obviously is a big, long, rectangular building, and unit 17 is the far right unit on the plan, and you can see that there's, it was used as a law office, and there are about 6 offices. Actually, we're going to, there were 6 offices previously, and now there are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 offices, 10, 11 offices, a computer room, and storage in that area.
Okay.
The clientele will not be accessing that unit. That'll be more administrative.
Okay. And in regards to, I guess, the 100 elderly that are going to be included now, can you explain, are they going to be transported just like the other participants in the program?
Yes, the clients will all be transported via the vans, as we discussed earlier. Montechusett Regional Transit Authority is going to be the provider, and it's going to be the same pickup throughout the city, drop off between 9 and 10, and then again, pick up in.
So
in
would
the
they
afternoon.
also be coming from the residences? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So no one comes in from another facility, it's all from,
No one comes in from another facility. It's all individual residents.
okay.
So there's not a big change. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, just so, because we made a representation before, and I thought it was appropriate to let you know that there has been a change.
Right. And the total is still 200, just like it was the original
Yes, there's
plans
no
in
increase in
submittal?
the amount of
Okay.
clientele that will be attending the facility.
Right. So as far as materiality, I don't see where the use is still the same. I mean, obviously, the clientele has changed a little bit. I don't see, that's why I asked about if they were coming from their private homes.
Yes, they are. yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess do you have anything else you want to add at this point?
No,
I guess I'll open it to the public and see if Ms. Zunis wants to say something. Anyone here like to speak in favor of this petition? In favor?
I'm not shy anytime there's an opportunity to have a microphone, talk about what we're doing over there on Bridge Street. It's a great building, by the way. I have an office in there now, so we've been doing some work and going through planning and development to get the proper permits to start our construction phase, and everybody in the city has been very helpful. It's a nice neighborhood. We're talking with Steve Stoll in regards to signage and looking at the fence and the other conditions that you put on the previous time we were here, so we are working with the city on those things. The change is very insignificant as far as what we're doing. Adult day health on one hand and day habilitation on the other hand, both on the first floor, maybe some on the second floor as we branch out with other offices and admin offices, but it's the same vehicle of transportation, same method, just a frail elder on one side and those folks with developmental and disabilities on the other side. So it's not appropriate to kind of mix the different populations of people that we're serving. They have different issues, and so we're thinking it's best with the state to say, give us a license for day hab for 100 and give us a license for adult day health for the frail elders. And so that's what we're doing. It's two different funding sources with the state, so they want to see it separated out. They actually want to see the population separated out. So the building works perfectly for that. So we're excited. We're looking sort of like a March 15th opening, if everything goes smoothly from this point with construction and renovation. But we thank you for your time, and thank you for the support for the project. Building's been empty a long time, and we are more than pleased to own the entire building, including Unit 17. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that portion of the public meeting is closed. Anyone here in opposition? Opposition, opposition. Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'll open it up to the board. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to voice my support of this project. I think you're doing a great job over there. The building, the parking looks like it's settled, and I'm glad you mentioned the fence, because the fence does look like it needs to be tended to. But I really am in support of this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kevin?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I have no concerns. I think it's a great project, and I wish you well. Thanks.
Thank you. Gary?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm extremely pleased that we were able to work this situation out. I'm a big supporter of these types of programs, and I'm glad that you're able to separate and provide actually two services to two different clienteles within the city of Lowell. It bodes well for what you do in the city, as well as what shows what the city's capable of doing when we work properly together. Just to refresh my memory on passenger drop-off, we're still going to use that same entrance. We're going to use that same entrance and that same rampage for both clientele. None of those aspects have changed at all, correct?
Things changed.
Great. I wish you the best of luck with the project.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Corey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement with my colleagues. I think it's just a great project, and certainly enhance the lives of some elderly residents in the city and some handicapped residents. So this is wonderful to see this on the outskirts of downtown. So this unit here is pegged for, Mr. Occasion, just administrative use, pretty much, yeah.
That's, the plan right now is to have offices and a computer room in that.
Okay, well, that's not much of a change to me, so I do support it, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Clerk, at this point, I'd like to make a motion to amend the applicant's previously approved special permit with conditions to include the proposed new amendments, which would be in the drawings submitted for the, I guess we'll call it the 17th office space, and also for the addition of the 100 elderly participants still staying for the still total of 200.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit. Now, we have the resident issue and the plans to be, with the following condition, that plans be submitted to planning and development to include unit number 17 as part of the plan. Second, to include the, what's the second one?
So they're changing
Oh, yeah, okay.
the number of
That's the,
from elderly to 200.
change the, so the participants are totaling 200, 100 to be elderly residents, and the other 100 participants to be intellectually disabled individuals as well.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Belanger?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Ahern?
Approve with conditions.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved with conditions.
Mr. Perrin?
Approved with conditions.
Okay, Mr. Cajun, been approved with conditions. Wish you the
very
best
much,
luck with the
gentlemen.
project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I just point one thing out? Since this is an amendment to the special permit, and I heard a number of the members point this out, that felt it was a minor change. There should be just a second vote that states that the board found that the proposed amendment was minor. It didn't constitute a substantial change to the original approval.
Okay, I thought I said
Just
that.
make-
I thought I said that before.
You did, I just wasn't
Speaking.
included in the motion,
You
so
obviously have no authority in this position. Okay, go ahead.
it just has to be a separate vote than the actual special permit,
Okay, so
I'll just state it out for the board. It's basically a motion to find that the proposed amendment is a minor change and is not a substantial material change to the original approval.
okay, so we need to have a motion, Mr. Clerk, stating that the amendments are not substantial material change to the overall project.
I make a motion to approve that the changes are not substantial, the amendment changes are not substantial to, not a substantial material change to the overall project that was previously granted.
Okay. I have a second.
Second.
A roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Belanger?
Approve.
Mr. Ahern?
Approve.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved.
Mr. Perrin?
Approved.
Okay, Mr. Occasion, you've been
Thank you.
approved a second time. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, next order of business is the approval of the minutes for December 12th and January 9th, 2012.
Yep, I assume all the board members had a chance to read the minutes for December the 12th, 2011, and January the 9th, 2012. So with that being said, make a motion to approve the minutes from December the 12th, 2011, and January the 9th, 2012.
Could I have a second?
Second.
A roll call.
Mr. Bailey?
Approved.
Mr. Belanger?
Approve.
Mr. Ahern?
Approve.
Mr. McCarthy?
Approved.
Mr. Perrin?
Approve.
Okay. And our last order of business is for elections for board members, and this has to do with Mr. Noon's resignation from the board. So tonight, we as a board would like to take a vote for interim vice chairman. And with that said, is there anyone that'd like to make a nomination for the vice chairman's position?
I would nominate Gary for that position, Mr. Chairman.
For vice chair?
I'm sorry, Vice Parent, Corey for that position. There you go.
Okay.
My mistake, sorry.
Okay, so at this point, I would also like to nominate Corey Belanger, Vice Chairman. Anyone else?
At this point, I would like to nominate Mr. Belanger for Vice Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to elect or nominate Mr. Corey Belanger, Vice Chairman, on an interim basis. Thank you, Corey. Do we have to take a vote for that?
Yeah, a vote would
Okay.
be good, yeah. It,
So-
it doesn't have to be a roll call vote, it can just be a regular vote.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to take a vote for the nomination of Corey Belanger for Vice Chairman. Dennis?
I agree with the vote.
Agreed.
I support the vote.
I support the vote.
Well, I'd like to thank my colleagues for your confidence and your support, and all I can say is I won't let you down. Thank you very much.
So with the election now of the Vice Chairman, we now have an opening for the Secretary's position. So any nominations for the Secretary, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Gary Perrin as Clerk and Secretary.
Okay. Anyone else like to make a nomination? Okay. Hearing none, we'll take a vote for the Secretary's position. Dennis?
I support Gary Perrin for secretary position.
Thank you. Kevin?
I support Gary as well.
And I support Gary as well.
And I support Gary Perrin as well.
Okay. So a vote 4-0. Mr. Perrin, you're the new Secretary.
I want to thank my colleagues for their support.
Thank you. Okay, anything else?
I believe that's it, Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. We're adjourned.